let me move on to the next speaker and on the panel, and this is Meru Suwala, who I've known Meru as Meru for the longest time, and since 2004. And Meru has been in Bahrain since 1994. If you go to Bahrain and if you are looking for an organization that works on migrant worker issues, inevitably you will come across the Migrant Worker Protection Society. And I'm so glad that Meru is now, although she is back in India, that she was one of the founders of the society and played a very key role in working on a direct service delivery kind of role with migrant workers, even for some time establishing and running the shelter, and then eventually invited by even the Indian government to sit on the team that looks at the ICR fund kind of thing that is set up by the Indian embassy. Meru has had tremendous experience in talking to migrant workers who have come to her as victims, as survivors, as people in need of shelter. And she has processed, I'm not sure how many cases over how many years, but has been very, very instrumental in bringing relief and rights to migrant workers. Meru, over to you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, William, and MFA and all the organizers for this opportunity. It's very important to hear voices from the destination country and from civil society and people like within our organization who have actually done grassroots level work with migrant workers. Hearing all the panelists over the course of this last 1.5 hours or so, I would think that with all the kind of work that is being done in the country of origin, we should actually be having no problem, because everybody has talked about the publications that they're printing and how much they are disseminating the information. But I have really seen the underbelly of failed migration. And there is this underbelly, which is about exploitation, lack of information, wrong information, or people who have just been so desperate and driven into migration without actually receiving the correct pre-departure guidance that they should have at the countries of origin. And I would specifically like to talk about this in the context of India because it is a large country. And you do have many organizations, stakeholders who are undertaking pre-departure at various levels. But we are seeing migration that is now being pushed a lot into the rural or tier 2 or tier 3 cities. And we are not finding that the workers who are coming out from these places are properly and correctly informed. William, you also spoke about, is it information overload? But I'm not sure whether it is information overload or whether the migrant is just overwhelmed with the information. Because many times the people whom we have spoken to, the migrants in Bahrain during the course of my almost 18 years of voluntary work with the migrant communities, most of them are coming either with very little education or illiterate, and they don't have the ability to read all these pamphlets and documents. Information is useful when they are able to hear it directly from workers themselves or visually hear the stories, like the way Regiment spoke about earlier, that we need to bring the voices of migrants out so that it becomes meaningful, the information that we are giving to them. We do need the information at every step and stage of the migration cycle. I think that is clearly established. But what is the kind of information that is coming out? It is sometimes incomplete and sometimes it is incorrect. And by incomplete information, I think a number of panelists have touched upon it, that key aspects of what to expect is hidden, deliberately withheld from workers, because if they were available and known to the workers prior to departure, perhaps the worker, like how Suha has pointed out, would be skeptical and would say that, no, I don't think I wish to migrate at this point of time. So we do have a situation where there is also this huge gap between managing the expectation of the worker and what they actually is the reality in the country of destination. And largely we are seeing South Asia is migrating to the GCC countries and the MENA region, domestic workers and garment workers, whether it is in Jordan or Lebanon. So they are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. They are not very educated. they get cheated. You have contract substitution, which is very common. But you have governments that are saying that, oh, we are taking out so many protection measures to take care of you. And you have people in the country of destination also who say the same thing, that, all this information is available to you. Then why is this information not being processed by the worker? Where is this big gap which is happening? Because there is a gap. And the workers are finding that there is, and it is also, sometimes misleading information, because you have government that says, your wage is going to be so much, your hours of work is so much, you will have a day off, you will have, end of term benefits. But recently we have seen, even the pandemic has, of course, upended everything. And under the guise of the pandemic and the umbrella of the pandemic, you are seeing wholesale people who are being denied wages, who are being denied end of term benefits. And suddenly, even from the month of March, people just abruptly lost jobs. And where is the information on how to handle this kind of stress? And this is something else that I wish to touch upon, is the mental stress that a worker faces when they have faced these kind of issues in the country of destination. I don't think any pre-departure training manual or curriculum is touching upon the mental health and well-being of the workers. And there is a lot of stress. You have workers who are migrating from close-knit communities, from families. The whole support structure is not there for them when they come to the country of destination. Particularly, you find, I have worked with a lot of domestic workers because our shelter primarily took care of women, and a large percentage of the women who came to our shelter were domestic workers. And domestic workers particularly have to face this isolation, this loneliness, lack of mobility. Where do you access the justice? Sometimes their phones are taken away from them, or they are monitored very closely. You have these security cameras in the house. So they find it very difficult that even if they have received all the information prior to their departure, how to deal with this in the country of destination, it is a very challenging situation for them. And mental well-being and mental health should be covered by both the country of origin within their curriculums, for sort of giving the people coping mechanisms on how to deal with these situations. You also have, at the time of departure, I have seen the pre-departure manuals of many of the civil societies and governments, and it'll all be one by one, it'll be told, you have problem, reach your embassy, your passport should not be taken away, the passport is the private property of yours. But what is the reality when they come? When they come, I have dealt with workers who have overwhelmingly told me that their passports were taken away right at the airport, and they never saw it again. Even after coming back and maybe filing a complaint, recovering their passport from the employer or from the organization is the single most difficult challenge which any activist will face in the country of destination. So you may be told all the things that are well and written on paper, but what is the real situation over there? How do you train a worker? How do you tell a worker that if your passport is withheld, what do you do? Okay, you go to your embassy or you go to the Ministry of Labor and you lodge a complaint. But that whole process is so tedious that most of the workers just give up. That is the actual reality over there. You have governments that are putting all these, rules and regulations, and no government will say that our laws are, detrimental for migrant workers. No country of destination has laws. Laws are excellent. Nobody's denying that. But where is the implementation? Where is the monitoring? Where is an errant employer who withholds passports actually been, prosecuted in the country of destination? Where are the companies who are mass scale holding on to passports? I have not heard of a single company that was actually hauled up, penalized, or the owner was taken into prison for violating this basic right of all the workers. But it happens all the time. So we need to actually look at how do you plug these gaps and these loopholes, because these are the stress points for all migrants. These are the problems, these are the real issues that they are facing over there. The other point that I would like to talk about is, a lot of the points have already been covered, so I'm not going to really go back and talk about it. But I do find that, I have been a resource person for a number of programs in Bangladesh and Nepal. And I found that, the pre-departure seminars or orientation programs can be very generic and can be, like a one size fits all. And it should not be like that, because even the GCC countries, each country is different. The laws are different. The implementation is different. For example, in Bahrain, we've had mobility since 2008, ever since the Labor Market Regulatory Authority came in. They announced with a lot of fanfare that, there is mobility. But in reality, mobility is not the way a worker understands it in their own country. You can't just up and leave your place of employment and start working for another employer. There are clear steps which need to be followed. There are protocols which need to be, taken care of. But at the time of departure, they are told that, okay, you can change jobs. Now, Qatar also they have said that you can, mobility will be there for workers. But mobility is under very specific conditions. And you have to give the full information that if you're telling workers that mobility is permitted, then you need to also educate them under which conditions they can take mobility. Because in the country of destination, in the GCC countries, if a worker leaves their place of employment without prior information, the employer has within the rights to go to the nearest police station and lodge a runaway complaint. And when you have a runaway complaint in the system, any other violations that the employer could have, done against the worker, all that is finished. The worker is only seen through that immigration prism as a runaway. So we do not have all the information that is being given to the workers in the right manner, in the right time, and at the time of departure. The people who are training workers in the countries of origin need to be absolutely up to date with all the changes in laws which are taking place. And this needs to trickle down and be told to each and every worker who is attending their programs for all these pre-departure programs. I also want to touch a little bit on the pressure that workers also face from their families during the course of migration. This expectation and hope that they have, that now we have sent a person from the family to the Gulf countries, and life will just automatically become much, much better overnight. It doesn't happen that way. Many workers, and especially male workers particularly, the pressure they face is so intense. I once had a worker who actually told me that when he came to us with a really complicated problem, and he said, my family only calls up and asks me, when are you going to send the money back? And we asked him, why don't you share with your family the problems that you're facing here? And he said, no, they will not understand, because they would rather I returned home in a coffin. If I return home in a coffin, at least the whole family and the community will come and cry over my coffin. But if I return empty-handed as a failed migrant, I will be shunned and seen as a weak and a failed person. So there are too many pressures which are on workers from all directions. And it is difficult to, there's nothing that can prepare you except when you go there and you actually face the reality. The working conditions, the living conditions, the money that is told to you that, you'll be earning. It sounds very attractive when you convert it today, particularly with the rates all going up. Today, like one Bahraini dinar is almost 200 rupees. It sounds very attractive, but actually the cost of living over there is very high. The money that is normally given to a laborer for living wage, for so-called accommodation, as it's typically 20 BD, it sounds attractive to maybe somebody coming from the village. But actually in Bahrain, what does it buy you? It actually just buys you bed space. It does not even buy you shared accommodation. It's a bed space which the worker, they share over 8 hours, the shift for coming and just sleeping. So we have to look at, information. And there's just one point. I found that in Bahrain, ever since we had the radio FM, which came in, which was the regional radio channel, which came in, that became a very powerful and important tool for disseminating information. And it has been used by embassies. It has been used by the labor authorities within Bahrain to share information, because they are listening to that. I have also found that the printed information may not be that effective as a communication tool, but certainly the auditory, and especially, when it is punctuated with all your songs and information on your cultural programs, the workers are listening to the radio, and they do listen to the
Okay.
information that is being said to them in their own language. And even the government is using it to disseminate the information. And for domestic workers particularly, uh, I had practically all who came to our shelter, and we looked after like 14 nationalities during the course of my time at the shelter in Bahrain. And most of them said that we were not aware of all this. We didn't know that we would have this kind of, restrictive working condition. It is only when they came and they actually found, that their movement, the salaries are not being paid on time. There are deductions which are happening for no proper reason. These kind of, these are really friction points. And these are the stress points which can, they just kind of lead to a lot of problems and complications for workers over there. So my real hope is that, when the worker is leaving, undoubtedly information, timely, correct, complete information should be given so that they are able to take a proper viewpoint and decide whether they really want to go. And I want to touch on one more point which Vijaya had made last week, where she spoke of dignity of work. I think this has to be stressed, particularly to our workers from the subcontinent. They are ready to travel thousands of miles to do a job that they will refuse to do in their own home country. The job of cleaning or the job of domestic work, which they will refuse to do in their own country, they will be willing to risk movement, or that they'll be ready to borrow money to pay for their recruitment and go all that way to do something that they could have done very much in their own country. And I think I'll stop over here
Thank you.
because a lot of it has already been covered by the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you so much, Meru, and thank you for that reality check. And I say reality check because you really did. I know, and I know this for a fact, like how you started the underbelly of failed migration. Because many of those cases are cases that I know you went personally to, attended personally to, and went through that process too. And I really like what you said about the mental stress and health and think of well-being of migrant workers. I think this is this is nowhere in the pre-departure information, the coping mechanisms and things like that. And to recognize also, we might speak of information in such a general way, but we know that implementation of the law varies from country to country. In the most democratic of countries, it varies from marginalized groups to the most restrictive of countries. So let's be aware of that. And thank you for that very realistic check.